All right, we'll move on. We have another question here, but before we move to that one, just sort of we'll start with Representative Hansen about the tenor of what's going on right now. I understand you're in a bit of a lull right now, in a way, although you've got conference committees working. So for the balance of legislators who are not on conference committee, what are you doing and how is this thing moving along? Do you have a confidence that we're going to close on time? Where are we going? Start with Representative Hansen.
Well, I'm hopeful. If we look a little tired, we've been going some very long hours in the last...
Burning the midnight oil.
Burning the midnight oil in the last few days. And May 1st was a deadline where we needed to get the bills off the floor in both houses. And we achieved that. And so there are 10 major omnibus bills for different topic areas. I have the environment finance one. There's the transportation one. There's state government finance, health and human services. So each of those, there are 10 major omnibus finance bills. Of those, half of them are Senate files and half of them are House files. So where we're at right now is both bodies have finished a lot of their work. We've had long debates, a lot of amendments, a lot of discussion. And now, tomorrow, conference committees will start meeting. And those that are House files, I know there are 3 conference committees that are starting to meet. And the Senate files, we're waiting. So if it's a Senate file, if it started in the Senate, then the Senate has the gavel and calls the first meeting. If it's a House file, then the House starts. And then you alternate every other day except Sunday. So I'm on a House file, or a Senate file, so Senator Ingebretson, if he's watching, Bill, we're ready to go. We're ready to start. And the Senate would call the meeting, and generally what happens at the beginning is you walk through the bills, and they are very different between the House and the Senate, very different. So the first thing you look at then is what's the same and what's similar? Where is there agreement? Now, what are other members who aren't on the conference committees? On my conference committee, there are 5 members. In the House, there are 4 Democrats and 1 Republican. In the Senate, there are 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And our job is to work out the differences, to compromise, and to bring it back to both bodies. When we bring it back to the House and the Senate, then you can't change it. It's an up or down vote. If you both pass it, then it goes to the governor for signature or veto.
All right. Well summarized. Not that there's anything to worry about. It will all work out, correct? Mm-hmm. Well, okay. We'll see. Senator Carlson, any other additions to that description?
Great job of explaining those mechanics. One of the things that we did impose on ourselves is some new and aggressive deadlines. This May 1st deadline is a new deadline, and that's to get the bills through the bills that are have finance in them, get them through. And generally, the word omnibus is really, it's a love-hate relationship because everybody has something in an omnibus bill, but we all dislike them. Yes. And so we've got the large omnibus bills done now. And what happens now is these conference committees are meeting, but there is another deadline that we're supposed to meet, and I believe it's the 14th of May, where the conference committees are all supposed to be done. This is new. We've not had that deadline before. And, of course, that's going to be the toughest one to reach, too. And likely when we get closer to it, there'll be a lot more pressure put on to the conferees to get it done. And also we'll be involving the governor's office a lot. Absolutely. Because we have to make sure that these bills can be signed by the governor. Sure. So if we get to May 14th and we meet that deadline, we are way ahead of any legislature that has been in my
history. And you're all veterans. You've been around this.
And I think one other hurdle that we have in the mix of that is that May 6th joint target. Because I think in order for our conference committees really to do the real work, we have to have that joint target to know exactly how much money we're going to spend in each one of these areas. Mm-hmm. And the leadership of the House and the Senate and the governor have to come to terms on those numbers so we can actually get down to work and actually know how much we're going to spend. And when we know how much we're going to spend in each area, then we know exactly how much we got to throw out and what can work, what can't work. So that'll give us a direction to go.
So for many members right now, or at least a number of them, a bit of a lull, but if you're on a conference committee, it really ramps up, correct?
Absolutely.
Oh, it does. And it goes hours. I remember watching just on TV, I think state government finance last year with Senator Rosen and whoever else was from the House. But, I mean, those people were so tired because there were so many issues that remained unresolved. And that's why it seems that this year is going to be, you know, particularly difficult because there's such a vast gulf between the House and the Senate's positions right now. And there's the Democrats have a proposal for $12 billion in new spending, $12 billion in new taxation, essentially, over the next 4 years. And I don't know what the Senate actually has, but maybe $1 billion or $2 billion, I'm not sure, but, you know.
I think it's a 2.2 if I remember.
Oh, okay.
Is where
All
we're
right.
at. So there's only a $10 billion gulf in there somewhere.
Right.
We can go have lunch together and get it all worked out, right? Okay. And so, all right, so just good to get the tenor of where we're at and what's happening, because it really gets to be crunch time. I've been an observer of this for years, don't know the inside, but now we're talking inside baseball here, and you know it really well. It is not simple, it is not easy, and for our viewers to think, well, come on, let's get that done tomorrow. I wish it were that way, but this is a democracy.
Might I add one more detail here, that Minnesota is the only state that has a divided legislature, where one party controls the Senate and the opposite party controls the House. So that makes that gap between the two bodies be extra large, because they're working on different priorities. So it's that is a major issue to solve.
Well, and when you think about last year, it was the same party, so the House was represented by House and Senate both had people of their own party here at the table trying to reach compromise. And even that was amazingly difficult. I mean, it just shocked me.
Well,
so here we have very different outlooks, I'm afraid to say, and how they will come together.
but
we
you
don't
have
know.
these different varying interests, a rural legislator versus somebody who's in the heart of Minneapolis. And there are differences. We've purveyors of this find out and listen to you.
On the optimistic side of the
Yeah.
coin, though, is everybody does want to get it done.
Right.
I think there's there is a real ambition or a real sense of we'd like to actually, no one wants to go to that proverbial shutdown. Everybody really wants to get it done. So we'll see. I hope that everybody's got that in mind as we go forward.
And I think the fact that we hit that May 1st deadline, I think that Minnesotans don't want us to be waiting till the last minute. They don't want that log jam at the end. They know that bad things happen after midnight at the legislature. So
We're at 11:58 p.m.
Right. So we want to do things in the daylight. We want to be having the meetings in public. And I think the fact that we hit that May 1st deadline was very important. And we have to be done May 20th. So if May 1st, May 6th, May 14th, and wrap it up May 20th with a close. I'm hopeful.
And somewhat of, a total unknown really, I guess, is how Governor Walz will be involved in the actual negotiations as the committees begin to close up the bills, because typically governors do that. But I think in the Dayton administration, you really didn't have, he was more hands-off, and his involvement was not until the end. And he looked at the bills and then said, I don't think I like them. So this governor may guide the process. Well, we'll have to see.
It'll
what
be
he's going to
interesting
do.
how much leeway the Governor Walz gives his commissioners to actually make those concessions and make those
Right.
deals.
That's true.
I'm hopeful. We'll see. I mean, we won't know until we get there.